Hey everyone, my name is Sagar and in this video we are going to create a sample application in Jetpack Compose, Retrofit and Android best practices so that you can refer to this video before your Android coding interview round. So without making any further ado, let's get started. So in your interviews, you will have a problem statement, something like this. You have to create a weather application. In our example, in your example, you can have anything like books or any kind of list data that you have to display the information. And there will be two screens. So we are going to create a list and detailed screen of our sample application. And in list, we are going to have a search query and then we'll display a list of cities. And in the details view, in the details screen, we will have the weather detail of that particular city. And we are going to use a free API to fetch all this data. So this is our example. You can suppose have another example of maybe a book. We can search for a list of books and then we can click on one book and go to another screen to show all the details of the book. Okay, so the very first step, even before starting your interview, you have to make sure that you have built the Gradle of your template from your Android Studio. So here I have chosen this Compose template and I have already built the Gradle and I am not wasting time with this anymore. And now before my interview, I have this ready with me and now I can focus on my problem statement. So here your first step is going to be to write all the requirements. So first of all, we need two APIs. One is to get the list of all the cities and another is to get the weather detail of that city. And let's search for any random free weather API. And you can see we are going to use this one. And you have to first sign up on this, so you can just sign up right away and I have already done it. So you can go to API Explorer and once you sign up you will have your API key, so you have to paste it here, select the protocol and format is JSON and you can see the list of all the APIs. So first API is going to be the search API because we are going to search. So let's suppose I'm going to search for Bangalore, so I am writing this query and in my search, okay, let me paste the API key. Okay, here's my API key, just use your own. I am gonna reset it, you cannot use it. So once I click on show response, you can see this is my API call with the query and this is header. So we only care about this thing. So there is a list of data and here you can see this is the response we are gonna get. ID, name, and once we get the name, we are going to pass it to another API and then we are going to get the weather detail of that particular city name. And let's search for some other. Okay, you can see there is a list of all the cities with this as a prefix in the name. So we are going to get all this. So we got our first API here. Let's add it to our application right here. And we are going to get the second API from this current. So in this current API, if you search for suppose Bangalore, you can see this is going to return us the weather details. So location and current have the weather details. So condition, you can see text partially cloudy and we also have icon that is PNG, so we can also show images. And there are a bunch of other details, so we can just show these things partially cloudy and we can show some icon and we can show name and bunch of other things. So this is our second API. So we got our API and API key. So this was our first step, and our second step is to write all the technical requirements like all the libraries, our first party and Google libraries, Jetpack Compose or any other third party libraries that we are going to use. So let's write it down. Okay, so first of all, we are going to create some UI, so that will be in Jetpack Compose. Next, we are going to have two screens, so we are going to use Compose navigation for it, and we are going to use model view model and Hilt for dependency injection. And for our networking, we are going to use Retrofit and OK HTTP3. And if you are using networking, then we also need some serialization, so Kotlin X serialization. We also need images, so we are gonna use coil image loading library, and I guess we are done. If you want to do unit testing, then you can also use turbine for coroutines and flows, then mocking with mock-k and coroutines testing. So these are the things we are going to need. So this is our secondary priority and this is the primary thing that we have to complete within the duration you are given. So your focus should be on writing the clean code with good architecture, and UI should be your second priority. So navigation should be there, but a good looking UI should not be your priority. You have to make sure you are writing a clean code. So now we need all these dependencies. So what you can do, I'm hoping that the minimum use of AI is allowed in your interview. So what you can do, you can directly copy paste this into any AI, and you can get all the dependencies that you want. Okay, so I added all the dependencies and build is done. So don't worry, it can take 5 to 10 minutes, and you can just leave it as it is. You can move it to your version catalog, but that's fine. We can keep it. And the first step we are going to do is we have to start from our data layer, because if you don't have our data layer, then we cannot actually have our UI layer properly, and UI is also not in our focus. So we are going to first add our data models, and then we are going to set up our service, then our repository, then view model, and then we can come to our compose UI. So let's create our data layer. So what you can do is we can just create a new package that is named data, and here we can add our model. So first we are going to get this dependency, this API's model. So we are going to get a list of this search result. So what you can do is you can right click, and if you already have this Kotlin data class to JSON X plugin or extension, you can use this, or you can directly go to any browser or AI to use this. So now we need our Kotlin data class. So what I am gonna write is, I am gonna name it city search response item, and for some advanced settings we can keep it nullable, and we are gonna use Kotlin X serialization. Here we have our first response, but it is showing some warning here. Okay, we can leave it and we'll see it later. Our second response is from this. Okay, here what we can do is we can also separate these city lists and the detail screen data layer. So I'm going to create another package, so model, and this is detail screen. So we can just use this. This is the whole response. So I'm going to write it weather detail and generate. Also create another package list and put this inside of list. Okay, here instead of model I decided to directly keep the data package name, and then inside of data we have a detail package and then list package. So we are gonna write our repository and all the stuff here. And before our repository, let's create our service class. So I will name it weather API service. That's our interface. First is our get city list, and yeah, this is gonna return us a list of city search response item. And what we can do is we can wrap it inside of a response object from retrofit, because that way we can easily get either it is success or not. And this is a get function, and you can see, so this is our base URL, and we have v1 search.json. So we can edit here, and this is our query. So for our queries we have key and we have q as our query. So let's add, and we also have another query that is key. So this is our API key, and right now I am gonna paste it directly from here, because that is not the priority of our task to move it to the right position, but you have to mention it specifically to the interviewer that this is not the right pattern to do it. And you can either do it with your build config file, you can generate it and then paste it, call it here build config.api key, or what you can do, you can also add it to the interceptor and pass the key query to every API there. And then we have our second function, that is current.json. It is correct, and the function name will be get weather detail, and that's totally fine. If you are also using some minimum code completion, the interviewer won't mind. So here we done our interface, and now let's create our repository, weather detail repository, and that's only gonna have one function. And just for the simplicity, we are also gonna wrap it in a response, and then we are gonna have implementation for this. So weather detail repository implementation, and the reason, and this is gonna implement our weather detail repository. And we also need the API in our parameters, private val weathers API service, and here we are gonna directly return this thing. And with this pattern, it will make it much easier for us to create any fake implementation for our testing purpose. And now let's do the same thing for our list. So Kotlin interface, city list repository, it will have only one function, get city list, and let's wrap it in the response. So that is it for our data layer, and now let's create our view model. So create a new package, and I'm gonna write it content. So inside of this we'll use the same pattern. First we'll have list, and then we'll have detail. So first create for list. So make sure you are writing this as Hilt view model, and then we need to inject the constructor, and here we only need the repository. So don't worry, we are gonna also make the Hilt module for our whole application, but that is just boilerplate code, so focus on your logic here. So first of all, think what are the things that you actually need here. So in the city list view model, so we are gonna search for a query, and then we'll have the list of the cities. So we need two things. First of all, the search query, and then the city list. So let's have a search query. I'll name it city query, and you can store it in a mutable state. And instead of directly using this mutable state flow, there can be a better option that might impress your interviewer. You can use here the saved state handle. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to store it inside of saved state handle. So you can write get state flow, and you can pass your key here. So I'm going to define it here inside of a companion object. Another parameter is initial value. So the initial value is going to be empty. Next we'll have our city list, and this list will be updated every time anything changes in this city query. So we have to also manage that thing. Either you can write a function that will call the repository and then get the data from our repository and update the city list, or what we can do here is I am going to create a flow here itself. So city dot, and you have to also make sure you are debouncing it, because you can also explain it to your interviewer that user can type fast and you don't want to make unnecessary API calls. So you can write it like this, and also after 300 millisecond we have to make sure that not anything has changed, at least to make sure we are calling our API. So after that, flat map latest. Why this? Because we have to cancel our previous API call and only then make sure to call API after anything has changed. So that is why flat map latest. And here now we will have our query. So with this query we have to search for city list, and we are gonna pass the query. So this is gonna be a private function. And what will this function return us? This function will definitely return us a list of city search response item. But you have to think here, there can be other things also. For example, there can be some error, there can be empty list, or there can be null data, like I am writing some bad query and there is no list and there is just null. So you have to also handle all these things, and for that you can also create a maybe a UI state. So I'll just create here UI state, and I'm gonna wrap it in a UI state of type T. I'll tell you how we can create this UI state generic for all the screens in our app. And what is this error? Okay, it is expecting a flow. Yeah, so we have to write it as a flow. Instead of defining it like this, what you can also do is you can directly build a flow here using flow builder like this. So this will be the same thing, and we have to emit a UI state of the list. So after that we can just create it a state. So you can see our UI state by default will be loading, or we can say idle, because initially we don't want to show just loading. When the user start to search, then we will show loading, and we will emit that here. So now let's create this UI state. So first of all, we are gonna have our data object of idle, that will be UI state of nothing, correct. Then we have our loading state, and then we also have our success state, and we will also have a error state with some message here. So that will work. Yeah, I guess this will be our generic class, and initially we are just assigning it as idle state. So here inside of this function we will make our API call. So when we are reaching this function, we know that we have a query, and this query can be also empty. So let's first check this. If query is blank, then we will just make it idle. Okay, you can see here it is required as UI state, but we are passing the idle state, and that is because the UI state is a large bubble, for example, and the idle state is the children of that UI state. So what we are doing here is we are mapping this, we are passing the children, the idle state, to the parent level UI state, and that means the inner children is passed as the outer parent, and for that we can use the out keyword here, and this will work because here we have to map the inner children to the outer layer, and that's why we can use this out keyword. And now we know we have some query, and then we can start searching, and before searching we can emit the loading, and then we can make our request to our repository dot get city list with the query, and here we can check if response is successful, then we can pass some success state, else we can pass the error state, and we'll get the error message here. So I think that will work. You can modify this thing. If the body is coming as null, here I am passing the empty list, but you can modify it and maybe pass some error state and show it to the UI. You can also create a generic function to map this response object to the UI state object, and that will work for all your screens. But here, just for simplicity, it is just a simple use case, so I am directly putting it. So now this is done. When the city query is changed, this city list will be always updated. And let's create a function to change our city query like this. Okay, just think again if everything is done or not for this ViewModel. And I think there is one main thing pending, that is when we click on one city, then we have to navigate to another city, and if we are navigating, then we have to pass some event from our view model to our UI, and for that either we can create a shared flow or we can just create a channel here. So I am going to create a channel here, that is event channel, and this is going to be channel of my custom type. Either we can also show a toast message in the case of any error, or here right now we are only having one event. So let's create our event channel from this. So this flow will be observed inside of our UI, and and this will take a type of our events. So I'll name it city list UI event, and right now I'm going to only pass navigate to detail with the city ID or city name. So this event will be triggered from our any action from the UI. So let's create a on action for our UI, and this will take a city list UI action. So here I am using this pattern, that action will be coming from our UI and event will be passed to our UI. So let's create this class also, and I'll create it outside shield interface, And what kind of actions can be from our UI. And actions will be on city clicked, that will have our city name, and there can be also on query changed. So this will be also from our UI. So these are the two type of actions. And on city clicked, we have to get the action dot city name and pass it to navigate to detail. Okay, this will be a string here. And on city query send, we have to update this. So this will be a private function. And that is it. So our UI can now only call this function on action, and this will have these type of actions, and our UI is going to observe this, this, and this. So this is our events flow, this is our city query, and this is the our whole UI state. It will have loading, success, or error. You can just see it is a state flow of our UI state object. So our UI state is this, and this is a generic one. So let's paste it inside of our UI layer. So this will be our UI state interface, and we are going to also use it in our second UI. So this view model can just take you some time initially, but if you have created this first view model, then the second view model will be much easier. You have to just see this, and the things in the detail view model will be pretty similar. Okay, I'll move this also out of here. Okay, so let's create our second view model. That will be weather detail view model, and this is also health view model. Inject constructor. Now we know we need two things, our saved state handle and our repository. And for this view model, what we are going to have is, first of all, from our first screen, when we are navigating to second screen, we are going to have our state, that is our city name, so that we are going to get from save state handle. By default, when you are navigating in compose navigation, the parameter will be passed in this saved state handle, that you can tell to your interviewer. And for this key, I'm going to create a companion object, key city name. And this can be only a string and not a state flow, because that is not going to update on the second screen itself. When only we are navigating, that time this will be updated. So this will be static for our second screen. And now for this city name, we are going to get the weather details, and we are going to use the same pattern that we used. So flat map, we can use this directly because this is not a flow, this is just a string. So we are going to use city name, and I can create a function of fetch weather details, and then this will be a flow that will be converted to this state flow. So let's create this private function. And if your interviewer is asking you to turn off your code completion, then you have to write all the things manually. If you have your code completion with GitHub Copilot or any other API, that will make things pretty easy for you. So we are gonna do the same thing. First, we are gonna emit the loading state. Then we are gonna get the response for get weather details, and just the same thing. If response is successful, then we are gonna get the body. And if the body is not null, that means it is success. If the body is null, that means no data found, and else we are gonna just log the error. So that is it. Okay, we don't need this thing actually. We can directly write it like this, and this will still work. And on this screen, we can have event of navigating back, and there is no other event. So either you can handle the navigate back to this screen, or you can just keep it simple, because we are not doing anything on navigate back, so we can just leave it as it is. So this screen is also done. Okay, now let's set up our hilt. So this is our Android entry point. Let's create my application. Let's also define the permission for internet here. So now let's jump into the UI part. So we need to have two screens, and for that we can define our nav host directly here. So let's have our nav host. We need a nav controller. Then we need our start destination. So that will be, let's call it home itself. I will create a city list screen content for it, and let's create a composable down here, and inside of it we can just get the view model using Hilt view model, and this will be of type city list view model. And then we have our second composable, that will be detail, and yes, that will have a city ID. So city ID, so this ID should be equal to the one that we defined in our view model. So go to weather detail view model, and there you can see city, uh, key city name. So that should be that is getting the city name out of our save state handle, and this is what we should be passing here. So city, remember, this is not the best practice, this is just the time saving thing that you can do if you are short on time. And now when we are navigating from this screen to this, so let's have on navigate function, on navigate to detail, and this will take a string and it will return a unit. So for this we are gonna only have one function, and what this will do, nav controller dot navigate, like this. So now we have passed the city name to this query, and this is now present in our backstack entry. But how? From our backstack entry we are going to pass it to our view model. So our view model is weather detail view model, and if we are writing Hilt view model, so by default if you are writing it inside of a composable, so this Hilt view model will take the nav backstack entry as the parameter, and here you can see view model store owner. So this will be our nav backstack entry, and it will check nav backstack entry, and if there is any parameter, so that will be passed to our save state handle. So that is how it is gonna work. And if you are not writing it here, and suppose you have created a weather detail screen just like this, and if you are writing your view model here, then this won't have access to our nav backstack entry, and that is why it is not gonna have this city name here inside of our save state handle. So just make sure you remember this thing. If you need to pass the navigation parameter to your view model as inside of save state handle, then you have to make sure get the view model here, and then you can pass the view model directly here. So our view model will be here, and that is it. So our navigation part is also done, and now we only need the two screens. Okay, so let's start by adding the UI for city list screen, and here we will get all the states. So search query. Next we have city list UI state, and we are calling it city list. And then we also have our channel, so we can start collecting from that channel, our event channel inside of this. So view model dot event channel dot collect, and we can just write city list UI event dot navigation. So that means we can navigate from here. Okay, okay, we have to wrap it in when. Okay, so that will work, and now we will pass these two states and our own action callback inside of another composable that will be more testable, because here we are getting this from our Hilt and all the stuff. So we'll make it independent of our view model. So I'll name it same, and I'll pass these two things. not this. Instead, I will pass on action directly, and view model, I will propagate it to view model. So I'll make another composable for it. We can get all these states here, and this is of type UI state. So I'll paste it here. So you have to focus on saving your time as much as possible. And now let's move it to another file that will be list. And for our imports, let's get it from here. And you can press on Option, Command and L for removing the unwanted imports. And let's import this. Okay, so for this UI now we will have a scaffold, and scaffold will have a padding, and first we want out outline text field at the top bar, and then below that we will have our list. So we will manage all the loading, error or idle state inside of that list content only. So let's pass this padding, and then we will have our outline text field. So we'll have our value, that is search query, and then we will have our own value change, so that will be on action definitely. So on action, and we will have on city query changed, and label, that is fine, label is fine. And yeah, so we will have a when statement to handle all the states, our idle state, and we will also handle the UI state separately, idle state, yeah. And then we will have our city list, that is definitely there. So for our idle state, let's show a text that is center aligned, dot fill max size, and then content alignment is center. So we'll have a text that is saying start searching for cities. Okay, and for our loading state, let's have a circular progress bar instead of text. And for our error state, let's have a text, but that is showing our city list UI state dot message. That is it. And let's create our city list composable, and that list composable will have, so this will be another independent composable that is also reusable and testable, and that will only take our city list, that is a list of the city search response item, and on city click. So on city click we are passing the name to our another screen. So that is it. Here we will have our lazy column, and we will have items of city list, and here let's have a list item composable, and on click let's add a clickable here, and on city click with it dot it, that's it. So this is our UI for city list, and I guess this UI is done. There is nothing left. On click we are handling all the states, we are handling, and our events we are handling, that is coming from our view model, and actions are also propagating to our view model. So I think that will work. So this UI is completed, and don't forget to mention all these reusable composables, and it will be always better to have small reusable composables. so that will have a good impression to your interviewer. And let's create this. So for this screen, here we have view model, so we will get our UI state, and then we will also have our launch effect for events, but there was no event. So let's create our weather composable screen with only this UI state. So let's create another composable that takes this UI state, and this UI state is of type weather detail response. So this is just a simple static screen, and we can just create any type of UI that we want here, but we can also show an image here. So first of all, I will use a scaffold, and it will have a padding, and what we can use here is I can center align in a box, and the same way I can handle all the UI states like this, and handle the idle state separately. Okay, so remember one thing, we don't need this idle state, because when we are navigating to this screen, we should show loading. So idle screen should not be here in any case, but still let's show some text here that will be center aligned. And for loading, let's show a circular progress indicator. For success, let's create some UI, weather detail content, and for error we will show a text again. So let's create this. Okay, let's create a column, and inside of that let's first show image. So we are using coil for showing the image. You can see coil image loading, and model is dot current dot condition dot icon. And also remember one thing, and also if you remember it correctly, you can see in the icon there is no https prefix, so we have to add that. Like this. So, and then we will have our text data, city name, temperature, condition. That is it. Okay, let's move this to the file where it belongs. So we'll go here and all the imports. Okay, so now we are only left with our Hilt DI. So let's set up our DI. So we'll create another package for DI, and we will just simply name it Hilt module. Okay, so this should be module and install in. Then first we have our, so this will be singleton and provides, and this will return us. So we will use retrofit to create it, and we'll take a retrofit instance here. So let's create retrofit. And for the converter factory, let's remove this. Let's write JSON as converter factory, and we need a content type, so let's define it here like this. And now let's provide our repositories. So repositories can be also singleton, so this will take our service and this will return our city list repository, and this will return the implementation. Okay, and let's do the same thing for weather repository. Okay, so I guess Hilt is also done. Let's build the application. Okay, you have to fix all these error live when you are working. You can use AI or Stack Overflow, anything. So let's search for this error. You can go to this and update your Kotlin version. Okay, so sync this. Okay, so our application is running now, and let's search and hope to get anything, and it crashed. I think some dependency issue might be there. Serializable, that the serialization compiler plugin is applied. Okay, so serialization was not done properly, and I guess the API call was successful. I hope so. And let's check here. And I think the issue is what we faced here. It was showing some warning, and that is compiler plugin is not applied to the module. So let's add that, and that will probably go here. So let's add Kotlin, and yeah, that is, and that version we can get Kotlin serialization plugin. So this is the latest version. Let's use this, and hopefully now this will serialize it properly and we'll get our result. Okay, so let's start by searching. It's showing loading state, and now it is showing success. So we finally did it, and if we click on Bangalore, now it is crashing again. So let's fix another bug. Navigation destination doesn't exist. Okay, that is because we are not defining it properly. So let's go to our main activity, home, and we have to use curly braces here. That was the issue. So if we click, okay, so this screen was empty, and we did a silly mistake that we are using here this key, city list view model, but instead we have to use city weather detail view model dot key name. And for this view model, let's make it private so it won't be accessible anywhere else. And that is the problem when we are not following the best architecture, and we are just saving our time to write it like this, but instead we can use some best practices to create it in a separate sealed class or interface. So let's write it. And now you can see this is the detail screen, this is the list screen, and when we are rotating our device, it won't reload the data for both of the screens, and that is what we want. So I hope you learned something new in this video, and you can follow this pattern of creating a Compose application. And the main key point where your interviewer will judge you is your view model class. So make sure you are writing all these in a proper manner, and you don't have to focus on your UI part. So if this part is sorted and it is scalable, then your interviewer will be impressed with you. So I hope you learned something new in this video. If yes, then make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and thank you for watching.